You're in your house. You're doing household chores. You're washing the dishes. You let your mind wander and you start thinking, what should my next adventure be? And I'm telling you right now, the Boundary Waters should be on your mind, because that's what I'm going to walk you through today. A trip I did recently, or the most recent trip I did. I'm going to walk you through planning, e-scouting, figuring out where to go, getting your permit. So this is for someone who's never been to the Boundary Waters, also just, a beginner camper. And I'm just going to walk you through a recent trip that we did from Brule, entry point 41, up into Winchell. Camped there for 5 nights, day tripped from there. That was the type of trip we wanted to do. So we're going to talk about that, packing, signing off, and enjoying your next epic adventure. See that lone pine up on that hill over there? What are we actually doing right now? The kids are just wild out there. They're wild. But they're having a good time, They're having a good time. This is Untamed, Unbroken, The Adventurer's Guide, and I'm your host, Blake Bredesen. Now, maybe not everyone's had that thought, but I really do recommend, if you've never been to the Boundary Waters, you should go at least once. If you've never done a wilderness trip, you should do one at least once. For those that don't know or aren't familiar, Boundary Waters is a little over 1 million acres. It's got 1,200 miles or so of canoe routes. There's over 1,000 lakes in the area, and it's all interconnected by streams, rivers, and portages. Portages, if you're not familiar, or portage, if you're from Canada. They're basically the trails that connect the lakes. People will carry their gear, their canoes. If you're going on a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters, you will walk along portages. You can also just hike. There are trails, hiking trails, designated hiking trails through the Boundary Waters that you can just hike. You can do a through hike all the way through if you'd like. There's options there. But man, it's a pristine area. It's quiet. The solitude, the peace you can find there, it heals the soul, most definitely. It's a place that I've been going to since I was 8 years old, so over 25 years now. And it's definitely helped shape the person I am today. It's a place that I turn to when I need to unplug. I need to just slow down. It'll force you to slow down. It does take a couple days to start to slow down. In a 5-day trip, you're not really slowing down too much relative to if you were able to do a 30 or 40-day trip. You're still slowing down on day 30 or 40. Like, we're wound so tight in today's society. So, Boundary Waters. Let's start with the planning. Planning's the most important. I like to start with e-scouting. I use an app or a software called Onyx Backcountry. That gives me a good overview. You can see the campsites on there. It's a subscription, $30 a year. You get the entire United States. You can have it on your phone. You can download offline maps, which is super nice when you're in the Boundary Waters. You have those maps available to you. You just turn on airplane mode and it shows you where you are, which is super convenient. I like to do the scouting on the computer a lot of times. There's a bigger screen, so desktop. You can mark pinpoints. You can, mark this campsite, mark that campsite, and be like, these are places of interest. Recreation.gov is where you're going to go to reserve your permit. They also have some additional information. They have a Boundary Waters trip planning guide, which is a PDF. They talk about the Superior National Forest. Quetico Provincial Park is basically the Boundary Waters equivalent to Canada. Canada has a bunch of provincial parks. Quetico is much bigger than the Boundary Waters. More lakes, it's huge. But you can also access Quetico from the boundary waters. You fill out, it's a little more paperwork and permits and stuff like that, but it's a possibility if you're wanting to plan something like that. Your permit is like an overnight paddle permit is required from May 1st to September 30th. Like you have to have a permit. If you're going from October 1st to April 30th, you can do self-issued permit, and you can do this at the entry points. So that's super nice. You can also do it at the Forest Service offices. There's no fees, there's no reservations. So that's nice. I personally love the boundary waters in October. It's amazing. You can hunt, you can go grouse hunt, you can duck hunt, you can fish, you camp, and the weather's like 50s, 40s, 50s for highs, lows 30s, most likely. That's probably pretty typical. But most people, they are there for a canoe trip, which you can do in October and November if there's no ice on the lakes, which usually October there is not. But May 1st through September 30th. So you got to plan a weekend. You basically need entry point that you want to go through, which you can find this little map at, look at there, right? bwca.com. If you're watching this on video, if not, I'm just looking at an overview of the boundary waters, which you can do on Onyx Backcountry. You can do that right here. This is free. It's going to show you all the entry points. You can be like, all right, let's go here. Also, outfitters can walk you through and help you with trip planning. It's always a good resource too. There's a lot of entry points. And so you need to figure that out. Other things you should probably figure out first, you're doing your e-scouting, is plan what type of trip you want. Do you want a solo trip? Are you going on a group trip? Are you going to paddle into one spot, which is what we did? We went entry point 41, Brule. There's a entry point 41A, which is also Brule. It's the same entry point, but with that one, you're required to camp on Brule, on that lake. Like you can't camp anywhere else. There's a lot of campsites on Brule. Brule is a huge lake. You can have a lot of fun just doing that. And because it's a water entry, like at that entry point, you go right into the lake. That's nice, especially if you're just camping right on that lake, because you can just bring a bunch of stuff. You can bring a big cooler and you're just paddling up to your campsite. You don't have to lug that stuff from lake to lake on these portages. Some entry points, you start with a portage right away, and you have to carry your gear to the lake or to a river and then set off in the canoe from there. So you're going to want to figure out that. Maybe the trip is a distance trip. You're doing a big loop. You're camping at a new spot every night. You just got to know those things before you're planning your trip. Maybe your exit point is different than your entry point. You got to plan ahead for that. So for this trip, I knew we'd have at least 4, maybe 6. We just picked a place we haven't been before, and that's how we decided. Heard some good things, heard the area was cool. We're like, well, let's just go here. We'll go in through Brule. We'll head up. I kind of knew the area I wanted to go to, which was like Omega, Gaskin, Winchell, somewhere in there. And then it was kind of open where we were actually going to end up camping. But I scouted out that whole area. On one resource I used was the Boundary Waters, bwca.com, and Onyx Backcountry is probably the thing I use the most because it's right on my phone. I pay $30 a year. They get updates all the time. It's very nice to use. But then also paper maps. We didn't have any paper maps for this area. You can order them beforehand and get them shipped to you. Fisher maps, Mackenzie maps, True North. To name a few, I personally like, I think ones I have are all Mackenzie maps. They're waterproof, very nice. They just lay out a section. Sometimes you need to buy two, depending on how long your trip is or how far you're going in. But having that map and compass is a necessity for sure. So you basically figure that out. You got your, we're paddling into one spot and we're camping. We got 4 to 6 people, which to reserve your permit, you only need you on there. You can add people later. So, and then we figured out the dates. So figured out the date, boom, we were end of July. So I got the date, put the feelers out there to the people. I was like, I'm reserving for this date. That cool with everybody? Everybody says yes. A couple of people are like, maybe that might work. Whatever, reserve it. And so then we have our permit reserved. And then a few months later, kind of get a confirmation on people. And then I add the rest of the group. And then you can even add people up to, like, I think a couple days before your permit, maybe even the day of, I'm not sure. Reserving your permit's relatively cheap. I think it's like $16 a person. And then maybe a $10 some sort of fee. But it's very affordable. You don't have to worry about that. And then the rest of it is gear. If you don't have any gear, an outfitter is the place to go. There's numerous ones in Ely, Minnesota. There's numerous outfitters. I'll name a couple that I'm aware of and have used: Preparedness and Ely Outfitting Company. Those are two that I've used. You can even, I know at Ely Outfitting Company, they have little bunk houses or rooms that you can go there the night before. You can stay there and then wake up super early and go. They have showers, bathrooms. They will do everything from renting you a canoe to outfitting your whole trip and providing a guide. Just cost varies between those two. You're looking to rent a canoe is $40 to $50 a day, probably somewhere in there. I think one time when we rented a canoe, it was $46 a day. And that gets you that nice lightweight Kevlar canoe. You're talking like a 45 pound canoe. Super nice. I have a couple North Star canoes. One is Aramid, it's the Kevlar. One is carbon fiber. And a solo canoe and a tandem. The solo canoe is 28 pounds. The bigger tandem one is 40. I think it's 42 with the yoke. The yoke is a couple pounds, a pound and a half. No, scratch that. It's just 42 pounds. The yoke is permanently attached. I have a removable yoke, like a clamp-on style yoke, for my solo canoe. So we got our permit, we got our dates. Now it's just kind of planning what kind of gear you want, plan your food. I don't really think about much until springtime. But if you need gear, winter or spring is the time to be getting that gear for sure. We ended up having 5 people. We had 5 people, 3 canoes. The max you can have in the boundary waters is 9 people, 4 canoes or 4 watercraft. And so we had 5 people, 2 tandem canoes and 1 solo canoe. 2 people in each tandem and myself in the solo. I try to, even if we're doing a trip like this, personally, I like to pack on the lighter side if I can. You don't want to run out of food, but that's one place you can save a ton of weight. Food and gear. We actually all slept. There was 4 tents for 5 guys. And I think technically it's a 3-person tent, but let's be honest, that's a 2-person tent. These tent sizes are like, if you're stuffed in there like sardines, then it's a 3-person tent. When you're sleeping toe, feet to head type of thing, like, I don't want my head next to somebody's feet. I want to be able to move around, have my gear in there. That's kind of luxury. Some people will hammock. They'll just sleep in a hammock, which is very convenient up there because then you don't have to worry about finding level ground. You just need a couple of nice trees and you're good to go there. If you have a nice hammock that is comfortable sleeping in. I've slept in a hammock before. It's okay. I probably didn't have the best setup. They make some pretty decent hammock setups these days. But you can do that. You could go up there and camp under a tarp and sleep on the floor or right on the ground. That's all up to you. I prefer a tent, especially in the midsummer, with a, mesh screen. I don't like to be, it gets mosquito-y, black flies, no-see-ums. Yeah, it can get brutal up there from time to time, depending on how wet the year is and or how dry it is. Bugs can be really bad. Ticks can be bad too. But generally it's those mosquitoes and those little biting flies. And the mosquitoes, they'll come out. They have like a witching hour. At least on this trip, they had a witching hour where it was bad from maybe 8 to 9. And then it wasn't so bad, 8 to 9:30. Then it wasn't so bad. So if you could survive that 1 hour or 1.5 hour period of time, then you'd be okay. Let's just talk briefly about food and breakfast. I like to pack little like instant oatmeal. You just add water. I'll make my own. So I'll make them in a little baggie. I'll measure things out, put them in a plastic bag. And then if I want brown sugar, I have that pre-done. That's in there mixed in already. And then, so did that for 5 guys. Bars, really like bars. Lara bars. There's Cliff bars. RX bars are really good too. I prefer Lara bars. They're clean and they're good. They're mid-range calorie-wise. You're talking 200 to 220 calories for a bar. I feel like that's good. Protein bars are good too to get some added protein. The first morning or first night, one little trick you can do is freeze like some eggs in a container, thaw that out and cook eggs that first morning. If you're going bougie, that's a good, we used to do that a lot. We didn't do it on this trip, but growing up, my dad did that a lot. We would have like 4 containers of these eggs, like they're like little 2-quart containers. They were maybe 1 quart. So 4 quarts of eggs mixed up, just a ton of eggs. We only had like 6-7 guys, but that's a good one. I like the pancakes, just add water. That's good for a breakfast. Sometimes I don't like to eat much in the morning. It's like a bar and some oatmeal and I'm good to go. And then I like bars for snacks. I like trail mix. I keep my trail mix simple. I go with cashews, peanuts, raisins, dried cranberries, and either some dark chocolate, like dark chocolate chips, or peanut M&Ms, or regular M&Ms. Those are good too. I like the peanut M&Ms. And I will baggie those out, like separate them for each day. And I separate the food. Like this is our day 1 food, and that's in its own bag. And it will have breakfast, breakfast and dinner. And then lunch is kind of whatever. We'll bring in like some salami and flatbread. I like to do that for a lunch. It's quick, it's easy, it stays good. Baby Bell cheese is good. That stays good. Those are just some things quick off the top of my head. Dinner that first night in, we'll bring in like brats, hot dogs, that type of stuff, because that'll stay good for that time period. And we've even brought in steaks bacon wrapped steaks. We've also shot ducks and then ate those, which is way better. That's like the best. So there's some food samples. I mean, bring some stuff where you can make some. If you catch fish, you can have fish, but don't count on it. Like, make sure you have enough food packed plus a day. That's what that's a pretty safe bet. You have enough food plus an extra day. Then if you catch fish, that's bonus. Then you just have some food left over. We didn't catch many fish. We had fish one night, I think. And, but we had a ton of food left over because I think I just overpacked because I was like, I don't want people to go hungry. And so we overpacked plus everybody ended up bringing some of their own snacks along with the snacks that I packed. So it was like double up on snacks. So we had a lot of that stuff. If you're looking for caffeine, personally, I don't drink coffee, but I do drink like Celsius or Bubbler, a couple types of energy drinks. Jocko Fuel is good, but those are all in cans. So Celsius actually makes a packet that you can just add to 16 ounces of water, and that's perfect for me. That's all I have. That'll get you 200 milligrams of caffeine. Not bad. But they make instant coffee in a packet, same thing, or little cubes or Java cubes. I've heard of all sorts of stuff. People bring a freaking backcountry French press. You'll just have to look into if you're a coffee drinker, you'll have to look into that. I don't know all the ins and outs in that world. So I like to bring, for drinks otherwise, I like to bring some electrolytes. Little Gatorade Zero packets are good. Element, LMNT, is good. Hydrant is another good one. They give you, it's basically, think like salt packets. Think sodium, potassium, magnesium, just to restore those electrolytes. That's what this is for. Liquid IV is another one. There's quite a bit of sugar in Liquid IV in the standard one, but they do make a sugar-free version as well. And I think it's just sweetened with like stevia extract. So those are all good in my book. And so I like to pack those, one a day type of thing. And it's nice just to add some flavor. So when your water, I actually love the taste. The water is very clean in the Boundary Waters. I personally use my Canoe water filter. It's just like the 1 liter bag with the filter, and you just squeeze the water out. That's what I use as my primary water filtration. I bring pills as a backup, but I haven't needed to use those at all, knock on wood. And so we'll do that. That's kind of gear-wise, water filtration devices of some sort, SteriPen, Sawyer Squeeze or Sawyer products. Canoe has some good ones out there. You're talking $45 for the one that I have. It's a 1 liter. That works really well. Life Straw is another good one. You can get just the straw. You can get the bottle. You can get Life Straw with the bag. That's what one of the guys in our group had, was the basically Life Straw's version of the Canoe 1 liter flexible bag. It's nice because when there's no water in it, it packs away. You can roll it up. So yeah, gear wise, I feel like when you're getting closer, we're talking tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad. I like to bring a little camp pillow, Teton Sports on Amazon. It's a little 18-inch wide pillow, folds up. It's kind of bulky, but to me, it's worth it. Some extra gear. I like the sleeping pad I currently have been using is just from REI. It's an REI brand sleeping pad. It's similar to a Thermarest. It's a little narrower, but it's comfortable. It has a good R value of 5.1 or something, the R value. So you don't have to worry about getting cold at all. When you got that R value of 1, sure, that's good in the summer, but that's about it. You're getting cold. If it's spring or fall in the boundary waters, you need an R value of 3 plus. And Thermarest is going to get you that 3, 4. I have a Thermarest that has an R value of 6. That's legit. But it's bigger. It's bigger. It's a little bulky. Sleeping bag, I like just a 15-degree bag. I've camped in October with a summer bag that was rated 58 degrees as the extreme, and it didn't even get to 58 degrees for a daytime high. It was 30 degrees at night. I slept in that with a little liner, which gave me a couple more degrees of warmth. And then I had wool socks on, sweatpants, sweatshirt, and a winter hat. That's how I slept. And I was a little cold that night. It wasn't enough to it kind of kept me up a little bit. I didn't sleep super, super well on that trip, but I survived. I would say I was at the bottom end of that extreme category for sure. So I don't recommend doing that. If it's July, we had 60s and 70s for highs. It's very windy. I didn't get cold at all. I mean, it was warm. But that 15-degree bag, that's the extreme end. It says the comfort rating is right around 30, 32. So if it's freezing, you should be comfortable in a 15-degree bag. This is Fahrenheit. So that's, just personally what I like. I actually have everything in, as far as packs are concerned, I have everything in a hiking pack, nothing crazy. I use dry bags. The pack itself is a little bit water resistant, but if it were just sitting, sometimes the canoes get water just sitting in the bottom from when you paddle and you splash up. Things would get wet. Garbage bags, black garbage bags, heavy duty garbage bags work great to put in your bag and then stuff all your gear in there and tie that off. That's a great way to do it. Man, kind of went off on a tangent. Let's back up. Camp gear. Tarp is nice to throw up over where you're going to be sitting. If you have it over the fire area, know that sparks from the fire might put little holes in your tarp. And if you do put it over there, make sure you got it kind of canted up at an angle so that smoke escapes and you don't just create a little area of smoke. Cooking ware, if you're on a little solo trip, maybe you get away with a little solo stove and a little titanium pot, and then that's it. For this one, we had some bigger pots and pans, which was really, really nice. It all nests inside of each other. And, silverware, all of that stuff. Pretty nice, pretty easy. I don't like to pack a lot of food I don't like to be cooking when I'm up there and spending all this time cooking and then cleaning the dishes. That's not what I want to be doing. I just want to be sitting up there, relaxing, eating, for the most part, pretty quick and easy meals. That's why I eat a lot of bars and I eat oatmeal. I make Bisquick makes a little plastic container that is like a shake and pour. So you can mix up pancakes in there and then you pack that out. You can rinse it out. You could clean it. You could reuse it for other things or reuse it for the next time you go and add your own pancake mix to it. But I like things that are quick and easy. So think about that when you're at the grocery store and you're looking for food. Think about things that are add butter and water. You can always go freeze-dried. You can do freeze-dried meals. It's an option for sure. I wouldn't go every single meal freeze-dried, but if you're going to do a freeze-dried meal, make it like one a day, whether that's maybe a breakfast, maybe that's dinner, maybe dinner every day is a freeze-dried meal. And then fish if you got a little bonus going on there, or duck if you're hunting in October. Granted, duck hunting, no guaranteed thing up there. Like, you got to find the places. One good place, I'll let you know, is American Agnes. There's a river in that kind of the mouth coming into Agnes it's ducky and it's nice. We've hunted there before. You just kind of set up like you would a normal duck hunt in the weeds, cattails. A lot of ducks flying around there in October, or at least there was when we were there that one time, one weekend. All right. I mean, gear-wise, there's a lot of resources out there for packing lists and stuff for gear. I even have one down in the link. But you want rope, you want some cordage, you want something for cutting or processing wood. That's a little folding saw. I have a big Silky Boy folding saw, which I love. We bring a little hatchet or axe, a little sharpening kit, or I actually like the Work Sharp. It's about $30, I think. Work Sharp has a nice, maybe 5 or 6 inch long sharpener that works really well for anything. Pocket knife, I like to bring a Leatherman. Just kind of all around, I like to have that Leatherman with me, on me. So we also brought camp chairs, full folding backpacking style camp chairs. Extra weight, extra bulk. But we only had like 4.5, 5 hours into our campsite area. So we brought the extra gear. We took a couple trips on the portages and it was fine. If you're going lightweight, you might not want that width. Or if you're going solo and you want to cut down on other areas, then pack it, man. It makes for a really comfortable camp scenario. Especially if it's windy and rainy. Like, when we got winded one day, wind chill, so we couldn't even go out in the canoes. So we're just at camp. Having those chairs is nice. Talking about some safety things too. You should have a pretty decent first aid kit with. Maybe I'll have another video or another episode where we talk about things to include in a first aid. But you should have some basic nav skills, wildlife awareness. Know that you're going to be in bear country, black bears in the boundary waters. So when you have your food, you put it in a bag. Maybe it's a canvas bag, like a Duluth pack or something. We put ours in a waterproof bag, and then into this canvas pack bag, and then hoist that up. And you want that thing out on a limb, at least 4 feet away from the trunk of the tree, and about 12 feet up minimum. That's what you want. If you can get 16 feet up, then you're doing good there. They don't always some campsites don't always have a good spot where you can hang a bag and hang that food to keep it away from bears. In those instances, they do make food containers. They do make some bear resistant containers. They make some bear resistant bags that you can put things in and just tie that off around kind of the base of a tree or something. Up in the Boreal in Canada, they make these. I forget what they're made out of, but it's just a bag. You throw your food in there, you tie it around the tree. It's bear resistant. Kind of think like Kevlar in that. I don't think it is Kevlar, but think something along those lines where it's like they can't really puncture the material. So that's a big one, keeping that food up and away. Navigation skills. It talked a little bit about maps and stuff like that. You should have a map and compass. You should know how to use it. That can save you. If you, like, I like to e-scout so much that I familiarize myself with like that top-down view of the area, that I kind of visualize where I'm moving on a map. as I'm paddling across a lake. And so then you recognize, oh, this little point here is right there on the map without even looking at a map. You have that visual in your head. That's how comfortable I like to be with the map. And then I refer back to the paper map mostly. Sometimes I bust out my phone if I need to know exactly where I am. If I'm like, I don't know exactly where this portage is, let's check on my downloaded map on my phone and see how close I am. And be like, oh, it's right around this point. And then it's back in that bay. That type of thing is nice. So having those skills is nice. You should know how to use a compass and map and compass. You should also know some basics, basic first aid. I think that's a big one. This is all preparing. You should know this stuff before your trip. Okay. You're not figuring this out on the go when you need it. In emergencies, we carry a satellite communication device. So I have a Zoleo. There's Garmin InReach Mini. There's the Bivy Stick. There's other ones too. Those were the three that I looked into the most before I went with the Zoleo. And I went with the Zoleo because just the ruggedness of it. The plans are good. The Bivy Stick probably has better plans as far as your service and the subscription, but they all use the Iridium satellite network. So that's a good one. Look into I don't know if you're in a survival situation and you have to hit that thing. Let's say you're on a solo trip, a tree fell on you and you're pinned down. You can't move, or maybe you were able to get out, but you now have a fractured leg and you need to get help to get out. And you hit that SOS. Cost-wise, for sure, just hit it. But some places I know it's at no cost to you if it's a real situation. Now, if it's negligence, then I think there might be an associated cost. I could be wrong on that, and that probably depends on your area and where you are. But they also sell, like Global Rescue is one. It's like $50 a year or something. And that basically covers you in those circumstances. Like you won't pay anything when you use them. All right, so we got all of our gear. We've planned. Now we are driving up. You got your canoes. You meet up in the early morning. We drove 4 hours the morning of. So we were going in on a Thursday. And then we met. There's 2 groups. So my brother-in-law stayed with me. We got up early. We picked up my brother on the way. Then my dad and other brother-in-law met us up in Tofty. Yeah, I believe it was Tofty. We just met in Tofty at the place we were picking up our permit, which was, what was it? Sawtooth Outfitters, I believe. And so we get up there in the morning, mid-morning, 10 o'clock maybe? No, 9 o'clock, get up there about. And so the whole goal was I just wanted to be on the lake, on the water by noon, which we actually accomplished. We got our stuff, got some bait, we got some leeches. We packed those all in, and we got in. It took us about 5 hours to get to our campsite. Could have been shorter, but a couple of the campsites we initially wanted to look at were taken. So we were limited on that. So you got to be flexible. When you're in there, you got to be flexible because there could already be people in that area, obviously, right? Like they took the nice campsite on the point. You got to keep going and you got to adapt. You got to just be a little flexible when it comes to getting a campsite and getting in there, and then picking your campsite if you have options, you know, you want to pick one that maybe is going to be a little less buggy, so it does have some wind blowing through there. That's why ones on a point are really nice. And a lot of times you can have your canoe on either side, and you put it on the non-windy side, and can be a huge benefit. But you're getting into your campsite, you want to make sure you got enough flat-ish spots for tents. That's kind of the biggest thing, and making sure there's no overhead dead trees right next to your tent, or limbs that look like they could fall on you guys in and around camp. That's not going to be any good. So yeah, when you're picking that, I mean, you can't do too much in the boundary waters. You have to camp in the designated campsites. So it's not like you can just go, bushcrafty and go dispersed camping in the boundary waters when you're on a canoe trip. I guess in an emergency, you would, because it's an emergency. But you're not supposed to. Leave no trace. That's another huge, huge concept. You treat the outdoors with respect. You pack out what you pack in, garbage. So you pack in a bunch of Lara bars, right? You don't just sit there and burn the garbage. You pack it out. It packs out super tiny. You just have maybe a gallon Ziploc baggie, and you throw your garbage in there. You're good to go. All right. You won't pack out much garbage anyway. Not if you're planning your food right. Know the rules and the regulations. Hunting wise in the boundary waters, you can hunt. You just have to follow state guidelines. Fishing, same thing. But yeah, once you're there, you set up camp. You have a nice tarp overhead. We were just kind of set up to hang out for 5 days. We did a day trip into Lake Gaskin. One day we got downpoured on the paddle back. It was kind of epic. We get from Gaskin across the portage and putting back into Winchell. And we just start paddling. It's starting to sprinkle, and then all of a sudden it was a gray day anyway. It didn't get any less gray. Talking about leave no trace, pack in or pack out what you pack in. It's pretty simple. Leave the boundary waters and leave your campsite, leave the area better than when you left. If you see somebody else's garbage, pick it up. It's pretty simple. Clothing. We didn't talk too much about clothing and what to pack there. I like lightweight pants that are a little stretchy, lightweight, they dry quick. Never wear jeans. Merino wool options are always great. If it's spring or winter, I'll wear like a muck boot or a knee-high boot. In the summer, I have Keen sandals. I wear those. My feet get wet. You do the entry where you're not scraping up and scratching the bottom of your canoe a whole ton. If you have an aluminum canoe, maybe you don't care, but if you have a nice Kevlar canoe or a carbon fiber canoe, outfitters will tell you to do the same thing. It's a wet entry, wet exit, meaning your feet get wet, which is why in the springtime and the fall, I wear knee-high boots. So then when I'm putting my feet in, they stay dry because the water's cold that time of year. Okay. But otherwise, yeah, just kind of packing for the temperatures. Merino wool's my go-to. It's what I like against my skin. Puffy jackets are nice because they're packable and they're warm. And sometimes they're even water resistant. So those are always a great option to have. You want some kind of warm layer like that for sure. If you're really cold but you want to sit outside, bring your sleeping bag, jump in that, and then sit. You can hang out outside in your sleeping bag, stay warm. But otherwise, enjoy your trip, have fun, be prepared for the worst so that when something does go wrong, you're not surprised, you're not You're not caught off guard at all. You have a plan. If someone gets hurt or you need help, you have to hit an SOS button. It really should be there only for an absolute emergency, like life or death. Then you hit your SOS button. But if you're with a group of people and you can make a plan to get out, you don't hit your SOS button. You get out on your own. That's what you signed up for. You get out on your own unless it's an absolute emergency, and then you can hit that SOS button or go get help. But you have to have a plan ahead of time, a plan in place, and be prepared for it. That's when you have really fun. You have a really good time, and you feel the most relaxed in the wilderness area when you're planned for contingencies. So I could go into detail, and I will on later episodes, about certain things. Like there might be one episode in the future where I'm just talking about gear that I pack for the Boundary Waters in the fall or in the spring, or this is what I pack exclusively on this summer trip. But that is for another episode. I feel like I've been rambling enough today, just kind of talking through that trip, the Brule trip. It was a great trip. We had good weather. It was a little windy a couple days, windy on the entry, windy the next day. It rained one day. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah, that's coming in off of Gaskin and back into Brule and just started downpouring. And I took out my double-bladed, my kayak paddle on the solo canoe, and it was just paddling as hard and as fast as I could. And my dad and brother-in-law were behind me, and he said, like, the only thing they could see was the paddle moving against the gray sky above the water line. That's the only thing they could see, was the two blades of the paddle moving. Like, that's how everything else was just gray and just a complete downpour, not great visibility. And we had to paddle half that lake to get back to our campsite. And that's a 5-mile lake. So yeah, we had a couple miles that we paddled to get back to camp in the downpour. And then 15 minutes after we got back to camp, it stopped raining. It was perfect. It was perfect. But you get caught in situations like that, and maybe it's really cold. Like, it was 60 degrees, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But if it's cold, that could be a situation that turns worse if you don't have the right things at camp, or if you get caught and you can't get back to camp and you're stuck with whatever you brought on your little day trip. You got to plan for those things. So if you go on a day excursion, plan for you being stuck out there and having to overnight, sleeping in your canoe. Don't do that. You can totally do that. I've seen videos of people doing that, sleeping in their canoe out on the lake, anchored, and they have like a little setup in there with their sleeping pad, sleeping bag, and like some sort of shelter above them. It's kind of cool, but I don't know that I would get into it. But that is all for today. I'm going to leave it there. End of January. I think it's like the last Wednesday of January, 9:00 is when you can reserve permits for the Boundary Waters for the coming year. The sooner you can do it, the better. Those popular entry points, they go kind of quick. And if you're new, you don't know what ones are the popular ones. I'll name you a couple. Entry point into like Lake 1. Entry point into Mud Row. Entry point into the Moose River North. Little Indian Sioux North. Ram Lake. God, I don't remember what one that is over there. It's in the Tofty district, I think. Lake One, North Cowishawi. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Anyway, there's some like Little Indian Sioux North. They do like 6 permits a day or something like that, or 2 permits a day. There'll be places that do 1 permit a day. And that's it. Like one group of people get into that site every day. Some places like Moose Lake, which is you can paddle or motor, they have 27 permits available every day to go into that area. One of my favorite places, Mud Row, they have 2 versions of this. They have Mud Row, which is 5 permits a day, and then they have Mud Row Lake restricted, where they have if you have this type of permit, you can't camp on Horse Lake, which would be fine, because there's other lakes. You can go into Lower Basswood Falls. That's the 2 permits a day. My other favorite is the Moose Portage River North, and that is 5 permits a day. Little Indian Sioux River North, 6 permits a day. I know that one's very popular. I haven't been on it personally. Some bigger ones, Fall Lake is a 14, but that also, you have some motor, 25 horse limit on that one. Baker Lake, 2 permits a day. Ram Lake, 1 a day. That's up on the Tofty side of things, up the North Shore. But yeah, you'll just have to look into it. There's some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful areas. It's pristine. I highly recommend it, at least going once. But with that, I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening. Have a great day and stay wild. Thank you for sticking around. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Even 1 word, it helps a ton. Sincerely appreciate you guys. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay wild.
You've been listening to Untamed, Unbroken, a Lone Pine Adventures original podcast.